European leaders have pledged to raise 7.5 billion euros toward developing a coronavirus vaccine. The online fundraising conference kicked off with a €1 billion promise from the European Commission. Europe has seen more than 140,000 COVID-19 deaths, with Italy and the UK each logging more than 28,000 deaths. For more on this now, let's bring in our UK correspondent, Ollie Barrett. So, Ollie, this is quite a commitment from the various nations. How is this money going to be brought in or raised?
Yeah, that's right. The European Union had set up this initiative, but it was also co-hosted by a number of other countries, including the United Kingdom, a virtual summit with leaders chatting over video phone at various points and delivering their speeches in that way. The UK contributing more funds to this effort again, a total of $8.3 billion going into efforts to try and find a vaccine, to develop a vaccine, to potentially work on the manufacture of a vaccine if and when that point arrives, but also on treatments for coronavirus COVID-19 as well, potential treatments at least, and also for other research projects and to try and get some money to some developing nations which need it in their fight against COVID-19. So a large amount of money pledged. The European Union has faced some criticism throughout this crisis of perhaps not taking the leadership role that it might have done, or at least finding it difficult to take a leadership role given the structure of the European Union itself. But in this regard, the European Commission certainly feels that this was a worthwhile project and a large amount of funding certainly committed.
And speaking just before this virtual gathering by the European leaders and various other leaders of the world, Ollie, was the Prime Minister Boris Johnson in the UK speaking, saying that this is the most important endeavour of our lives. Very important and quite apt given that the death toll in the UK continues to rise.
The death toll does continue to rise. It's now up to 28,734 in all settings, so that includes hospitals, care homes and people who die in the home as well. That is a huge, grim, depressing number. Certainly the UK believes it's headed in the right direction in terms of daily fatalities. The last 24-hour period, so this was Sunday, recorded 288. Now, that is a large number of daily deaths, but it is the lowest since the end of March. Lots of questions, therefore, being asked about why Britain has been so badly affected. The government's been criticised for acting too slowly when it comes to imposing a lockdown, but it says it acted at the right time based on scientific advice, and that the delay, if there had been a delay of a few days in either direction, wouldn't have made potentially the difference that would lead to quite this level of fatalities. Scientists here are saying, those that advise the government, you shouldn't be yet drawing a straight line between the number of deaths and any particular cause that you think might have led to it, be that the timing of the lockdown or other matters as well, demographics, population density, the international connectivity for the United Kingdom. There are studies suggesting that high levels of obesity, for example, might lead to people being more at risk, and the UK does have high levels of obesity than many other Western nations. So all sorts of potential factors feeding into this, and scientists here saying it will be many months before we know exactly why this large death toll has happened here on British shores.
And Ollie, just on this EU-led effort to find a vaccine and other treatments for COVID-19, very curious, of course, is the absence of the United States, because they have a death toll that's nearing 70,000, yet they're not part of this global effort to try and fight the pandemic.
Yeah, and that is leading to fears that Donald Trump may be considering a sort of America First approach when it comes to vaccine development, but also vaccine manufacture and who gets a vaccine once we get to that stage. Certainly the UK is saying that it wants to take a lead in vaccine development. There are two projects going on at Imperial in London and Oxford University which are showing some signs of progress, and the UK has said when we get to the point when trials are successful and one of these vaccines can be manufactured. It needs to be scaled up on a vast scale so that we can get the vaccine to the population here, but also to the people who need it elsewhere around the world. And real fears, certainly here in Europe, that the Americans are working on vaccines, and if they get one that works, that they will limit it, certainly at first, to the American population. Boris Johnson insisting, as were European Union leaders today, that the only real way that the world will beat this is if the world works together on vaccines, on treatments, on aid, on all sorts of issues. And so, yes, some concerns about the international role currently being assumed by Donald Trump's White House.
Ollie Barrett, live for us in London as always. Thank you.